Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Soul Speak. I am your host, Emily Miller, intuitive guide and healer. All right, so this week we have a fun episode. Well, at least I think it's fun because it was one of the coolest things that I learned about my creator field and how it works, and exactly why certain people acted a certain way toward me. So, for my whole entire life, up until probably about 2 years ago, I always thought that the way people treated me was just something that I had to accept. I had these people in my lives who I thought were treating me in a bad way. They were kind of crappy friends or crappy boyfriends or just people that weren't good for me, And I just thought, well, these are just the cards I've been dealt. These are the people that I have to, deal with in my life. And that's just the way it is. But what I really realized in all of this work and in the creator field situation that we have been talking about is that because we are in complete control of every single thing in our lives, that also includes other people. So, anytime I have ever been in any kind of therapy type thing or self development thing, or, you know, instances where people want you to get into balance or get into, out of these anxiety states, they always say, okay, let's make a circle. Let's draw a circle. And in this circle, I want for you to put all the things that are you can control. And then outside of the circle, we're going to put all of the things that you can't control. And the things in the outside are things that we just need to not worry about. Well, things that were always in the outside were other people, stating that we don't have control over other people. That is entirely, completely wrong. We control other people by the way that we feel about ourselves. People cannot treat us in any way other than a way that we have been treating ourselves. So, with this comes in the role of villains. So, think about the villains that you've ever watched on TV, read in books. They are necessary in a story, right? In any sort of plot line, you have villains. You have the character who is creating obstacles for the hero, right? And so you have your hero character, which is going to be you. You are a hero in your own life. And then we also have villains. There are people in our lives who create obstacles for us to overcome. So think about these villain characters. What do they do? How do they occur in these other heroes' lives? They are, let's think of, this is the best ones, and this will go straight to my story that I'm about to tell. But think about Disney movies and think about Cinderella, okay? Who's the villain in that story? The mean stepmother, the wicked stepmom. And this is what do you call it? A very typical type of character that is in a lot of different movies. There's always, especially whenever I was growing up, I remember all of these movies and cartoons and everything that had these wicked stepmoms. And that stepmom is always there to prevent the child from being able to do things. They, in Cinderella, make Cinderella, she has to go clean things, and what else did she have to do? She got all the sloppy seconds from everybody, basically. And the stepsisters, who were the stepmom's children, they got everything. Like they didn't have to worry about anything. They got to go to the ball, they got to meet the prince, and, all these things, whatever. So the stepmom was preventing Cinderella from being able to experience this life that she knew that she was destined for, to marry the prince and go to the ball and have all these things. So we have that villain character in the story, and their job is always to make the hero's life harder. Whenever I was young, and I had a lot of different villain characters throughout my life, but we'll start with the first one that I can remember off the top of my head. And my first villain character in my life was my stepmom. She was someone who my dad married whenever I was like 5. No, maybe 6, 7. I think he met her whenever I was 5. My parents divorced whenever I was 5, and she was the cause of my parents' divorce. Well, not the cause, but the catalyst, the like straw that broke the camel's back, right? So I had this idea of who she was in my head from a very small age. I knew that she was the villain. She was the bad guy. She was the one who like caused my parents' divorce in my head. I'm 5. What do I know about all the other things that were going on behind the scenes in their marriage, right? So to me, she was the villain. And she fully and completely played out that role in my life for many, many years. She was someone who would do, all the things that you see in those movies, where, her own children that she ended up having with my father were put before me. Their needs were more important and all these things. And, looking back on it, it's probably not fully the truth, but in my eyes, in that time, with the way that my life was, this is how I perceived the situation, right? And a lot of times my dad would choose, I would think he was choosing her over me by, whatever the things were. If I wanted to do something, and then she would be the one to say, no, she can't do that. She can't have that. She can't buy that. She can't go there. She can't have a party. She can't, do all these things. She was always the one who was like saying, no, Emily can't have that. Emily can't have that. In my eyes, this is how how I saw it. And so she was this role for me for a very long time. And what happens in this villain role and how these people act out these certain things in your life is they will pick up on something that you are doing to yourself. Okay. So I was at that very young age, through the people around me and the things I was watching and the things I was exposed to, I had certain beliefs that I had already put in my creator field, in myself, about myself, that I, deserved only a certain amount of things, or that I wasn't worthy of having all of the things that I wanted in life, right? We'll just say it in a very broad terms. I wasn't special enough to get my dad's attention. I wasn't special enough to get the things that I wanted. I wasn't special enough for this. And these were just kind of some of the things that were there in my existence at a very young age. And so she was the person who had a contract basically to come in and play the villain role in my life. So we have these like soul contracts with people. We have these things that are already in play that our higher self and source have planned for us to be able to learn specific lessons in this lifetime. So she was my first one. I did not shift or change the way that I thought, felt, or believed about myself. And so she stayed in my life for a very long time to teach me a lot of things that I needed to learn about how I was being towards myself. So I want to say it was maybe like 7th grade. I moved in and lived with my dad full time. And during that time, the villain role like really ramped up. Like it got really, really strong. I lived there from like seventh grade to maybe sophomore year of high school. And it got so, so bad that I left. So I called my mom one day and I was like, Mom, I cannot do this anymore. I gotta get out of here. Like it's gotten to a really bad, bad place. And at that point, I knew that I could not live my life like that anymore. I could not be around this person. And so, what I did at that point, because things had gotten to such a bad state, that I stopped and I said, okay, I'm not living this way anymore. I cannot do this anymore. This is not healthy for me. I've got to go. So, in that moment, I stopped and stood up for myself and I said, I got to get out of here. And I got my mom to come pick me up, and then I moved to live with her. So in that moment, I was able to become my own hero. So what happens is you will have these villains in your life, and we'll talk about some more examples in a minute. You'll have these people who are there to play the villain role. These people literally have no other choice but to play out the script that you have given them. You wrote the script with the thoughts, feelings, and beliefs that you are holding about yourself, put it into your creator field, and then the universe found someone to come in and play those exact roles out. So you have to first be doing something to yourself and do it a bunch of times over and over and over again to then have somebody come in, picking that script up, reading it, and then playing that role. Their purpose in life is not to be a villain. While that's how it seems, and that's what we see as the observer of our reality, they're actually a godsend. Like they are someone who is coming from source and higher self to show us exactly how we are being to us. They've got to play the role so big and so loud that we have no other choice but to say, I surrender, I give up. Like, I don't want this to keep going on like this anymore. I've got to do something to make my life better. And so these people are there to give us the biggest life changes. And if they weren't there, if they weren't able to play these roles that we have given to them via how we feel about ourselves, we would never really understand the way that we were treating ourselves. We would never be able to grow. We would never be able to have new experiences. So these villains are the people who are here to help us the most. And that is one of the hardest things to like realize whenever you're going through all of these new realizations about the way that we have created our own lives and taking like full responsibility over these situations and knowing like, okay, like that person was awful, but if they were awful, then how awful was I being to myself? I created that because I felt that way, and that person had to come in order for me to realize how bad I was being to myself. So they come in, they treat us horribly, we think, right? They're telling us, you aren't special, you aren't worthy, you don't deserve this. I choose everyone else over you, whoever the villain is, whether it's an evil stepmom, a cheating boyfriend, even if it's a bad parent, a coach, a best friend. There are many, many people who will step in and play this role. The key is that this person has to be somebody who you really care about. So they're going to come into your lives sort of like slow and easy. They're going to be people that you have to first love, trust, respect. You have to have these emotions towards them. You have to have these ideas about these people before they can behave that way to you. Otherwise, we wouldn't care what they were saying to us. It'd be like some random person that you're passing by in the grocery aisle and they just say, "Ew, you're ugly." Or, "Why did you wear that?" Or, you don't deserve to have all that good stuff. Like, whatever the thing is, it would affect us for a moment and be like, what's wrong with that person? That was weird, right? But if it's coming from somebody who we love, care, respect, trust, all of those things, like a parent or a coach or a teacher or a best friend, or like a relationship situation, a lover, a husband, a wife, a whatever, those people are the people that are going to matter to us. Those are the people who we will listen to and that we care about. And so whenever they come into our lives, we're going to have this, great relationship with them, usually at first, because we're going to have to care who they are. Unless it's like a parent. So, like parents, it's just within us that we think whenever we're little, we automatically think like they hung the moon, no matter what, regardless of how they treat us, because that's just how we think about parents at first, until we see something that teaches us otherwise later on in life. But at the beginning of life, that's how you feel. So the person has to, kind of slowly come in and then build up to being that big villain character for you. And then once you start listening, you start hearing, you start getting these like communications from them to see how they're treating you, and you realize you don't like it. It's not what you want. It's not how you know that you should be treated. And you're like hearing them say these things to you, and you're like, I don't buy that anymore. I'm not listening to that anymore. I know what you're saying to me and how you're being towards me is not what I deserve. It is not the truth. And then what you get to do is become like your biggest, ultimate cheerleader. You get to be the hero. You get to say, okay, they were my villain, and what they're doing is not right. It's not good, and that is not what I'm going to live like anymore. And then you get to have these people in your lives who are showing you this stuff. So it's really an amazing gift. Like, as hard as it is to think that person who cheated on you or told you that you were an awful person, or picked somebody else over you, there's all these things that they could do that make you stop and know, like, I deserve better than this. I am better than this, and I'm not going to live this way anymore. That is what the villain is there for. So that villain is only playing out a role that you have first played to yourself. That is the biggest takeaway here, is that nobody can treat you any way other than a way that you have first treated yourself. And then realizing that the only reason why they are there, why that person is there, is to show it to you, to mirror back, to reflect back to you exactly how you are being to yourself so that you can change it. So those villains are there to allow you to become your own hero and ultimately put you on your path to the greatest, best version of you. So whenever you realize that, you are able to then shift out of that situation. You are able to have that person leave your existence because you've learned the lesson, and that is all that they are there for. So a lot of times these people will completely leave your existence and you don't have to deal with them anymore. They just kind of fade away, right? And they might move, or they might get a new job if they're a coworker. They might, I don't know, somehow they will just kind of be gone from your life. And that is a really good sign that you have shifted out of that. sometimes even the people who are in your life and playing the villain role, they will not be the villain anymore. That's also another possibility. So just because someone plays the villain role in your life doesn't mean that they will always play that role in your life. They can also shift out of that role once, especially if they're like high frequency enough and they realize, not really realize because they don't, but it's like, okay, their higher self does, and their higher self is like, okay, my work here of being this way is done. They've got it. Now I can come back to who I know I want to be and provide and am able to be for this person. So this is a really cool thing too, that like, let's say it's your mom or your husband or something like that, and these people have been the villain in your life before. Well, once you understand what's going on, like through listening to podcasts like this one, and you see, okay, I did this, I created this, now I can shift out of it and I can either leave the situation, have that person will, kind of leave out of your existence, or that person can also shift. So you can have a really amazing relationship with your mom or your husband who you, prior to knowing this knowledge, had the worst relationship with. Those relationships can shift and change and become ones that are really, really amazing and fulfilling and wonderful. So you don't always have to leave that person, which is a really fun thing to kind of realize too, is that if you shift how you are being toward you, then that person will also be able to shift how they are being towards you. Because here's another thing to kind of think about too with the villain roles is there are people who have one experience with this person, and then there are other people who experience that person in a completely opposite way. So there might be somebody who is in your life and they bug you so much. Like you don't like them. They treat you badly. They say mean things to you, or, they insult you, or whatever the thing is about them that just like really, really irks you, that bugs you, is something that's going on with your creator field and that person. Because there is somebody else on this earth, probably somebody who experiences that exact same person that you don't like in a completely different way. So they might be like, you're telling them a story, okay, this person did this and blah, da, 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 da. And they might look at you and go, what? I've never had that person be that way. I don't know what you're talking about. I've never experienced them in that way. What's going on with you and them? Like, why is that happening? And the reason is because of your creator field. Like, you created that. So if there's somebody that's in your life and you've got stuff going on with them, but somebody else has a different experience with them than you, then they have the ability to be that way with you also. So you got to kind of think about it in that way too. So if they have treated somebody else in a different way and do consistently have these different relationships with other people, you can also have those really cool relationships with that person. You don't have to be in this tumultuous relationship with them, because they are capable of being that way with other people, just not with you, because that's what your creator field has created with them. That's y'all's little contract you have going on, and they're just playing out the role that you are being towards yourself. So that's another really interesting thing to kind of think about, that it's just you. Like, as long as you can be like, okay, cool, how did I create this? What am I doing to me that's making these people be this way to me? You've like accomplished the first step of changing it, of shifting out of it, is by taking the responsibility and saying like, yeah, I created that. And if I created it, then I can change it. And if it's a thing that I don't like, then I can shift it. Things can be changed, they can be shifted. And just because you had this little, contract, the script that you gave these people, it doesn't have to be that way forever. And that's the best realization of it all, is that you have the control over that situation, over that person. Because if you are then treating yourself in the very best ways that you can think of, and thinking of yourself in the very best ways, then other people will only have the choice to think and feel exactly the same way about you that you're feeling about you. So thinking about that is kind of, I know it sounds like simple at first, but there's a bunch of like little nuanced layers into it to see like exactly what's in your creator field and what you're sending out. But the first way to see that is to look around and see how the people around you are being towards you. And if you don't like it, know that you can change it by changing the way that you are being to you. So that's the thing that I kind of want you guys to just ponder over this week. Just kind of look, how are the people around me treating me? Who are the people that I wish I could change how they're being towards me? What are some of the things that they do to me that I want them to do differently? And that will give you some big clues as to how you are being to you, and some of the things that maybe might need to be shifted in order to shift these villains out of your life, because they are not the true villain. They couldn't have been a villain unless you were first a villain to yourself. So keep that in mind. Think about how you're being to you, and knowing that if you don't like it, you have the power, you have the ability, you have everything you need in order to shift that unwanted relationship either out or have it change into one that you do love, that is balanced, that is whole, that feels really, really good. There are many things that you can do to change it. So keep that in mind, and be sure to go to my website to sign up for the newsletters for exclusive events, healings, energy works, live Q&As, and to also sign up for a free mini read. Those are on the website. And have a gorgeous, gorgeous week.